Hola, hola, everybody. It's Dr. J-Flow, and I'm dropping in to let you know that there's something a little different about this episode. As you may be aware, we were lucky to host our first in person recording event in front of an audience a few weeks ago. It was such an amazing experience for me, and I think for our audience as well. The episode you're about to listen to is the result of that live conversation. It starts just like every episode does, and towards the end, you will notice a transition when we opened it up to the audience to ask questions. But don't worry, you will be able to hear those questions as I repeated them all so that I could make sure you could still participate, even if you were not able to join us in person. That's it for now. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and remember, unidos somos más.
Now, to my advantage, I had 16 years working in the oil and gas in different countries. So I did have the training. I did know how to do it. In my mind, I told myself, if I devote the same time and professionalism to my business as I did for Schlumberger, I should do okay.
Welcome to LatinX Scan, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, la doctora Yanire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Carlos Torres, a Venezuelan engineer and entrepreneur who turned a layoff into an opportunity to start his own business and spend more time with his family. And he is here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Carlos Torres, welcome to LatinX Scan.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about your story and where your story begins.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to summarize it. Obviously, when I was in high school, I think our chemistry teacher was so good at it. Literally, he laid on the passion on me for chemical engineering. And that was pretty much when I decided I was going to study chemical engineering. That's what I did. I actually specialized in downstream petroleum refinery. Then I ended up going upstream, right? Totally the opposite direction, but still in the oil and gas. Joined Schlumberger year 2000. And sure enough, that time I was 23 years old, haven't been out of the country yet from Venezuela. And right off, they sent me to Malaysia. And I worked in the Far East area for roughly about 4 years. That's where I was doing all my field engineer training from when you start in the field through doing engineering, technical. Did a brief stint in Norway, through the Middle East as well. Then I got transferred to Venezuela, to where I was equal to being well intervention. I was really enjoying it, pursuing a career, very passionate. And Schlumberger is a company that they do provide a structure for somebody to grow. From about 2008, I was about to pull my hair off because, you have managing operations and all that. So everything, business was good. And then I got transferred to New Orleans on the technical side of it, operations in the Gulf of Mexico. So I was there for right around 7 years. And, then started traveling around the U.S., managing different sales accounts, marketing. In right around 2015, that's when we got transferred to Houston. Right? And then 2016 is when I found the Royal Royal Energy Services. So that's actually last week we turned 7 years. So you're just getting the business off the ground.
Yeah. So take me a little bit back to growing up in Venezuela, right? We usually do a pre-interview where we get to know our guests a little better. And you shared with us, just to paint the picture, the Universidad Metropolitana is a prestigious private education or institution in Venezuela. We do have pre-education in Venezuela, and they're very good quality. And we also have some prestigious universities that are also private. And you enrolled at the Universidad Metropolitana. And anybody, I think, that knows the background and sees that on your resume would say, wow, that's nice, like really wealthy, right? Was that the case growing up?
You're right. People will immediately relate one thing to the other. However, no, that wasn't the case. With me, at least, right? And with so many others. It was just my mom and I. My father passed away when I was 10 years old. So it was, my mom was working to get us through everything. I mean, she was able to afford it, right around the third semester, just inflation skyrocketed. And honestly, she couldn't afford it. But I was not the only one in that scenario in the university. It was roughly about 35-40% of the whole population. So the university, because losing that volume of students, the university was just going to collapse. Right? So they developed a loan/scholarship program with one of the banks in the country. And, I applied for it. I got it. And the beautiful thing about it is that it was expensive, but the better you did, the more you would exonerate from the loan. Right? So that was actually a motivation factor for me to every semester do better.
Yeah.
So I want to say, if I remember correctly, the last 2 or 3 semesters, I was exonerated. I didn't have to pay anything because my GPA was really high. So that was it was good to see every semester my effort was paying off, right? So when I got out of college, I did have student debt. But then at that time, 23 years ago, that's a long time, I was able to pay it off, right? In relatively short.
Yeah. Yeah. I think education and access to education is one of the things that when I look at my Venezuelan friends, I was very privileged that I studied here and I have no student debt going all the way through my PhD. I had a scholarship from a very wealthy person that believes in education. And so they sponsored my undergrad. And then, of course, for those of you who study chemistry or doing a PhD, we actually get paid for doing a PhD. So that's how I managed to get a PhD without going into debt. But that's not the case for many people in the United States. And a lot of people do have to go into debt. So I think just having an understanding that university and the studies are so important that institutions make an effort to make it affordable and accessible for people.
Yeah, indeed. And without deep diving too much into student debt in the US, definitely, I do think it's more of a business than actually what it should be. People, meaning students, because most of them want to do really well, want to excel. Obviously, you want to attend the best colleges, the best universities, and obviously those are the most expensive ones, right? And to their credit, they do have credit and prestige, right? Now, companies at the end of the day, they have targets to hire people from different universities. And my advice would be just to be smart. You're going to get in debt here in the US if you're going to go study in college, right? Is it worth it? I do think it is worth it, right? It's just like buying a house. Some people want to have a mansion. Well, there's going to be a time in life when you're going to be able to afford it. So just be smart about it. At the end of the day, it's financials, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. Something to think about, especially where you go into undergrad. Maybe it doesn't make that much of a difference anyway. So then once you started your career, you mentioned that they really sent you all over the world. Lived in Southeast Asia, you lived in Japan, you lived in Europe and in Norway, you went back to Venezuela. And I bet that after being away for so many years, going back to Venezuela was also a different experience and something you had to adapt to. And I wonder, having lived in so many different places, having such a diverse experience, are there any questions about, not any questions, but advice about how to start a career in a foreign country and how to make that a successful experience for you?
So the beauty, right, of and I was blessed indeed, as you said, it's within 3 or 4 years, I traveled or visited different countries. And advice is basically, when you go to different countries, there will be different cultures, languages, food, customs, everything. We have to learn how to adapt, understand that place culture and dynamics. It depends on the role you're going, right? There was a time in my career where I was going to learn. When I was in Thailand, I went to learn how to work in Thailand, in the oil and gas in Thailand, right? So I needed to be as a sponge. Now, you never stop being a sponge, but I needed to absorb knowledge, right? From the technical perspective, but also I needed to understand and respect their culture. It was a very different language, very different food. So it was a struggle. I have to say the first 3 or 4 months of being in Thailand, I hated it. I wanted to leave because it was hard. It was a very drastic change for a young boy coming out of Venezuela, going to a whole different place, as I describe. But at some point, I decided to embrace it. Either I sink or I swim. And back in the day, people used to put you to the test a lot in the oil and gas industry. We still do, not to that extreme that we used to, but they used to put us over to the test, right? So that's when you have to know what do you want to do, where do you want to get, and then you have to embrace change and adapt, right? So when people see that you appreciate their culture, people that end up connecting with you, they open up.
Yeah.
And that's a key. That has been a key for me throughout my whole working life.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, one of the things that you shared with me when we were talking, especially when you went to Thailand that first time, I can only imagine how different that was. I've never been to Asia, so I don't know what it is like for sure, but I can imagine it's a very different environment. Maybe you were used to the chaos from being back in Venezuela, but one of the things that you mentioned is that at some point you said it's going to be easier for me to learn Thai than for the entire Thai team to start learning English, right? And so I think that's so key because so many people go with especially as an expat, people may go abroad and be like, oh, well, this is all I speak. And they might not make an effort.
Yeah, that's very accurate. Yeah. So, I mean, there was about maybe 15, 20 guys in the shop. The general manager was Malaysian and there was other guys were Thai. And they were very nice and cordial the first 2 weeks, trying to improve their English. And then they just went back to Thai. And I figured if I needed to survive, I had to start speaking Thai. I didn't have the time to go and study because, you're a trainee in Schlumberger. You're working from 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning until whenever you have to. So literally, I just started to repeat. Whenever they were talking in front of me, I just started repeating whatever they were saying. And granted, after a few weeks, I started learning the language. They saw I was trying to learn. Then they started teaching me. And then I was good enough in Thai to get myself in trouble, but also out of trouble. All right. And it was a beautiful experience. I mean, I have to say, when I left Thailand, I left family there.
Yeah. And how was that then experience of going back to Venezuela and then having to readapt? In my experience, for example, I left when I was 18. I only left for 2 years. I went to Southern Africa, a country that's now called Eswatini. And I lived there for 2 years. And it was, okay, I was 18, right? From 18 to 20. So it was my formative years. So every experience I lived changed me. And then I went back home and I was like, wow, I'm a foreign in my own country because I understand where people are coming from, but I no longer relate the same way I used to relate. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So that was pretty interesting. So, we, Hispanics, right? We tend to be hot blooded, right? And if you are from any country or most of the countries in South America, you can tell if somebody is happy just by looking at how they walk. And so you can tell if they're upset, right? There's just gestures. We love doing gestures to express our happiness if we're angry, upset, right? In the Far East, you don't really want to do that all the time. It can be disrespectful in certain situations. So I learned there how to control my emotions and not be so outspoken. So funny enough, when I went back to Venezuela, I had come from a different culture, having to learn that. And I go back to a very expressive and dominant culture, right? And that lasted me for like 3 or 4 months. I said, look, I got to put it's a joke, right? I mean, I used to put my Buddhist side of it. Put the Buddhist side of, I'm going to put my Venezuelan badge here. And, so it's just, then you have to adapt again, right?
Yeah.
So granted, everything I learned, I was still using. It was just a different way of how you communicate, how you get things done. Whether you're a manager, director, or whatever, you don't get people to work for you. You will always get the most out of the people whenever they're working with you because they want to work with you. So that we're talking about now, that was 17 years ago. But that still applies today at the Gulf Coast section. We're a team of volunteers. And unless you know how to collaborate with people that are not getting paid to volunteer, you're not going to get anything.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So then was it around 2007 that you moved to New Orleans and you worked in New Orleans for a number of years? And then in 2016, that was a time of change for you, right? I remember 2016, I was about to graduate from my PhD. And just the year before, I had done an internship at Halliburton in 2015. And about 60% of the cubicles were empty because we were in a down cycle in the industry, right? So at that time, not only is there, challenging conditions for the oil industry, but for you, you have your firstborn, your first son, and then his name is Lucas, if I'm not mistaken. And you are open about Lucas on social media because Lucas was born with a medical condition that's called Mobius syndrome. Before I ask more questions in depth, can you tell us a little bit about Mobius syndrome and then how you as a family deal with the condition?
Right. So, I mean, to briefly elaborate on Mobius syndrome, it's a rare genetic condition. It affects the sixth and the seventh facial cranial nerve, one of the nerves in the brain. Is not very well connected with the body, right? So they'll have facial paralysis, whether it's total facial paralysis or partial, but also lack of core strength and fine motor skills. Right? The syndrome has 1,000 shapes, meaning there's people with severe conditions and with very minimal. But granted, I mean, most of them, unless if it's not on the extreme spectrum, they can just live a regular life. Through therapy, developing skills, it just takes a little time to get there, but they get there and they live perfect, reasonable lives. Yeah.
And so for you as a family, have you had to go through any different measures or how do you deal with the condition as a family?
Right. So just put it in perspective, right? I mean, we got relocated from New Orleans to Houston in December 2015. Then my career with Schlumberger was over, right? Lucas was born exactly 3 months later, and he was born with a medical condition. And he remained in the ICU for a month. Now, at that time, it might sound crazy, but I actually was glad not to have a job because my entire focus was going to be on my son and on my wife.
Yeah.
So that worked just perfectly. And then to answer your question, how we move forward, right? I mean, without diving too deep, I mean, we became closer to our faith and through faith found the path to move forward. Right?
Yeah.
So we did have to make some changes and adaptations. And to summarize it, I mean, I think most of my life I have been self-motivated, very driven. But when I see Lucas, I feel like I'm a toddler, right? When you see a human being, he's 7 years old now. But when you see a human being that has gone through 6, 7 surgeries.
Wow.
And he has overcome every single thing.
Yeah. You're good. Thank you for sharing the story with us.
It's very motivational, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a passion they have.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can only imagine that as a family, it takes a lot of work and it's work that you do gladly because it's something that you want to see your son be able to walk around, live a normal life. And I know that the only reason I brought it up is because you are also on a quest to create awareness about not only the condition, but about what people see on other people, right? Like sometimes we make judgments so fast. Most of the time we're in a super fast paced life and nobody stops to observe something and say, oh, maybe that person is just mad. But maybe that person is not mad and something else is going on, right? And so just creating awareness about topics like this and also about having the opportunity to stop and think about what the background might be would make a huge difference.
It does. This year's campaign on that was look beyond face values. If you talk to an adult or a kid that has Mobius syndrome, they could be smiling or angry. You can't tell. But beyond the face, it's a full-blown human being that feels just like we do, right?
Right.
And so that was part of the awareness campaign. And that is every year, January the 24th, Awareness Day for Mobius syndrome. And at least my wife and I mean, it has made us more aware of when you see somebody with a medical condition, a difference to first of all, not have a first impression or reaction, but just to look beyond the face value.
Yeah.
Look at that person and see, do they need help?
Yeah.
And if they don't, then like, for example, Lucas, he loves to show he can do things himself, right? So it's including,
Yeah.
it's including, right? It's including people who are able to.
Exactly.
right? So
Yeah.
they may look different because of a medical condition, but that doesn't mean they can't get things done or think. I mean, in the case of Lucas, he's extremely analytical.
Mhm.
It's amazing. He has the memory of an elephant. He doesn't forget things. God forbid you offer him something.
Yeah. And also the reason why I asked is because I didn't particularly grow up in the petroleum engineering field. I'm not a petroleum engineer. And when I see the industry, when I see brochures about recruiting, all the pictures are of people doing something, right? Of somebody handling a drill. And all the pictures really indicate, at least to me, that to be in petroleum engineering in the energy sector, you need a lot of physical skills, right? And I wonder, for people like Lucas that one time may want to go into the energy sector, where do you think the industry is in terms of, being more inclusive, and where would you like to see it go?
Right? So indeed. So when you're talking about field operations, right? Definitely the physical conditions is required. Right? And when you look at it, it's both a requirement of the job, but also could also be a safety hazard for the person. Now, as far as including people with physical disabilities, right? There is room definitely for improvement within the industry. I mean, even nowadays, we're just talking about it with Karen before, with Susan, people can work remotely and do things from a computer, right? And they can get done things perfectly without having to leave their home right now. So there is room for improvement on that and to be more inclusive. So if somebody struggles walking, they can get things done from home.
Right.
Sometimes faster than somebody that doesn't have a medical condition.
Right.
So as an industry, yes, we should, and we need to improve on that. Because the truth is, when you look around, there's not a whole lot of people with medical or physical disabilities working. You look around the industry, no, the truth is, it's not there.
Yeah.
Quite.
Yeah.
So we have a long way to go.
Yeah. And I think also it's about imagining what's possible, right? Because I think of an example, and this happened to me, full disclosure. I was undergrad at the University of Florida, and I worked in a lab. I was doing research, and I heard my lab mates that were all graduate students talking about this new person that had joined the graduate student body as a graduate student in chemistry who was visually impaired. So she was essentially blind. And I was like, what is a blind person doing in a chemistry lab, right? Like for me, that was my initial reaction. Having already had volunteer at a camp for children with disabilities where it was initially established for blind people. So like I wasn't completely unaware of, being more inclusive, but that was my initial reaction, right? And so people were saying, oh, but like this person needs to be guided everywhere because she's not familiar and things like that. Those were our initial reactions, right? But that person basically did computational chemistry and is widely famous. And she is also the recipient of the very prestigious Ford Fellowship. And so it's just keeping in perspective that, just because somebody has a disability doesn't mean that they're not able to do something. We just need to adapt. One, that person is already adapting. And two, we need to be kinder and more inclusive and more open to help people achieve their goal because they all have potential.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have seen people with disabilities who may lack something, but in other areas, they have plenty of resources, right? So definitely it is indeed true. And it is something that we could improve.
Yeah. And so then 2016, right? We talk about a year of changes. So your job with Schlumberger ends, Lucas was born. And then at that same time, you also became a business owner and an entrepreneur. And when we think about, and I think about this from my own experience as an immigrant, is like, I came to work hard, get my degree, and hopefully get a job at a multinational company, hopefully, and get a stable job in corporate America where I could just worry about getting a visa to work and then moving on in my career. But becoming an entrepreneur is not really, I think, the dream of many immigrants, at least in, at this level of, I don't know if it's achievement or success or whatever it is, right? But it's not something that in my personal experience, would have say, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the States and I'm going to go through all this and I'm going to start my own business. I'm like, start my own business? I don't know where to start, right? What motivated you to start your own business?
We were in a downturn. Yeah, I mean, that was honestly the truth. I that time I was almost 16 years with Schlumberger, right? And I have nothing but good things to say about it. But it was a bad time in the industry, as most of us are aware. And finding a job was very difficult. Nevertheless, I mean, I founded Royal Oak Serving Services on April 13th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a month later, actually, a company who had known me called me and offered me a job. That was good because I wasn't in the plan. And that was Gulfstream Services, and they called me and offered me a job, and they were very kind, very giving to me, treated me very nice. So I was with them for just about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
However, for the last 5 years that I was in Schlumberger, I spent time with a great, wonderful group of people that had been bought over 2 times by Schlumberger. So they started a company in Schlumberger bought them. They started another one, Schlumberger bought them again. So I was working with them for the last 5 years. These are people that are 15, 20 years senior to me. And working with them for the last 5 years, I saw how a business can be started.
Mm.
I saw how they did it, right? And I was learning from them every day in and day out. So that really sparked my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things you learn how to manage, you try to manage working under pressure in the oil and gas, right? So, I was under pressure, no job, have a baby, was born with a medical condition. My wife had a job. She lost it because we had relocated to Houston. So you have to do something, right? I mean, whether it's flipping burgers or whatever, but you got to do something, right?
Yeah.
So I started to work with Gulfstream Services, but at the same time, I started my business, and I was working on my business from 8 p.m. until 2, 3 a.m. every day. And to avoid any, I have to say this, right? To avoid any conflict of interest, right?
Yeah.
My employment with GSI was strictly US based.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was doing had nothing to do with them, but for overseas businesses. So I was pretty much doing that for 2 years.
Yeah.
In that process, I grew the company. I gained about 25 pounds, right? Because obviously you stop exercising because you have no time to do anything else.
Yeah.
Right about that time, I thanked them and I decided to part ways. And to this date, we're good friends. We still collaborate. And I mean, a funny story. I literally started on my own in 2018. Yeah, like that's when I quit with them. And between April or March that year through November, I had 0 sales for Royal Oaks. And I was about to pull my hair out. I'm like, what have I done? And I couldn't get nothing out.
Yeah.
However, one of the things I learned from the man that I work with, he used to tell me, Carlos, when things are good, you hustle. When they're not so good, you got to hustle more.
Mm-hmm.
So for those 7, 8 months, I was just working, like just trying to build up a pipeline of opportunities, right? So by November, they started falling through.
Mm-hmm.
And between November, December, I pretty much made the whole year.
In sales?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was good, obviously, but you just got to work hard to
Right.
get things, right?
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things that even coming here to Greentown Labs for the first time is that, again, in my mind, I have so many stories and so many stereotypes. And when I think about entrepreneurs, I always think about, this 20-year-old something that quit school and then started their own company, right? But even coming to Greentown Labs for the first time, it was a lot of people that were, past their careers. They had an entire career in the oil industry here in Houston, and then they started their own company. So not only do they have probably a lot of money saved, but also the years of experience, right? Of having gone through an entire career. And that really shattered my stereotype that I had.
Yeah. And so just to share some info, right? I mean, when I was starting the company, you go to the small business administration, right? You start looking at some data, and the average age for an entrepreneur is between 45, right? They tell you that about 80, eventually it'll happen, right? That was an advantage that I didn't have that training beforehand.
Yeah.
I also have to say, in reality, having worked in so many countries and been in so many places, to me, the US is the one place where you can start a business and flourish.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to have a clear focus on what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of things that come in place, right? I mean, surrounding yourself with the right people, having mentors, knowing what you're aiming for in your business, right?
Yeah. And so now you've been a business owner for 7 years. And I wonder if there are maybe top 3 things that you wish you had known before starting that you can share with us.
That I wish I would have known. Well, I would have to say, understand what your priorities are. Money should not be your priority. And I say that money is a result of what you do. Obviously, you're aiming for something to get something in return, right? Money is part of it, right? But once you have that satisfaction of what you're doing, that you are enjoying it, obviously it's a business. It's going to be profitable. It's not a nonprofit, right? If you're going to do something for yourself, you have to enjoy it. So now, if you're going to start your business, you better say, I'm going to start my business. I'm happy to do it, right? I got to hustle, I got to work, but you enjoy it because it's your business.
Yeah.
So you see the difference.
Yeah.
Dedication, have clear sight of what you're aiming for. Where I have a path, and it has got to be a dynamic plan. It's not written in stone. You have to be
adaptability.
You have to adapt to the environment, right? And definitely, I believe as much as or as little you may know about something, I would strongly recommend to anybody to have a pool of advisors. I have a pool of advisors senior to me. When I'm not sure of something, I'll pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Hey, why do we do this? What about this? What do you think I should do this? Because sometimes you're in a situation and hearing somebody's perspective that you trust, it can be just an eye opener, right?
And how have you cultivated that pool of advisors over the years?
Well, I have to say all of them started as either coworkers or former managers of mine, right? Who eventually become friends. Okay. So, at some point in time, you cross over that barrier and you have developed those relationships with people. I have friends. We have a group of friends that we advise each other on things about life, right? So, and it's a healthy process, right? When you have a circle of people for certain different things. So,
yeah. I've heard the concept also being named or given the name of having your own board of directors, and it's sort of the board of directors of your life. And these are people that are somewhat impartial, right? But they can give you different perspectives on the decisions that you're trying to take so that you can give different kinds of advice and then you can make your own decision afterwards. So those are all the questions that I had for now, but I wanted to open it up to the audience and see if anybody had a question that they wanted to ask Carlos. Yeah. So the question was whether you see a difference between mentors and advisors.
Yeah, I may be wrong. This is my understanding of it, right? A mentor is somebody that you are in constant communication with. That's going to guide you through how to get something done, how to do it properly as per a standard, a process. And that may guide you on your career. An advisor is somebody that will help steer your direction. So you have somebody that may be alongside you along the steering wheel. Then you may have somebody from above on the side, however you look at it, that will help you steer in a greater picture, if you will.
Any other questions? How do you leverage your experience in the international field to then lead the SPE organization, where there's a lot of people it's very diverse. People come from different countries, and everybody's a volunteer.
Yeah. So indeed, Houston is a melting pot.
Yeah,
it is not known as such, but it is a melting pot. You look for a restaurant from any place in the world, you will find it. You will find food from anywhere. And if there's a restaurant from anywhere, that means there's people from anywhere here, right? having worked in different places, yeah, you learn how to communicate. I am a firm believer. The beauty of every country is its culture, and culture should be, nourished and reinforced. And as you interact with people, you understand that culture, right? I mean,
Right.
in business, I have customers from the Far East, Middle East, South America, US, Europe. You can't treat them all the same,
Mhm.
right? When you volunteer with people, if when you look at the Gulf Coast section, it's one of the most diverse ports.
Mhm.
It represents Houston's oil and gas community. The beautiful thing about it is we all learn how to collaborate respectfully, professionally. Even there may be differences of opinions, we all as professionals discuss and come to a solution for the process.
Okay. Any other question? Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself 20 years ago?
So as I said, I'm from Venezuela, right? And I have to say I have matured over time. I'm glad I have, you know. So, as a Venezuelan, we tend to be very hot-blooded. It's black or it's white, and it's my way or the highway. So I would tell myself, just cool down, cool down a little and let things go and evaluate and monitor, right? So one of my boss's mentors, name is Herman. He used to tell me, Carlos, you get more out of people with honey than with vinegar. And that works every time. It works faster or longer, but it works. So you get more out of people with honey than with vinegar.
Maria, you had a question? Yeah. Running your own business, how do you battle the fears of failure?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's good to be afraid. You have got to be afraid. At some point, you gotta have fear. If you don't, you're blind, right? Fear is a risk. And now how you manage risk, what you do to control that risk, right? So, you can be insane as long as you're aware of it, how you control yourself, right? So, yes, many times I was afraid. Yes, having a wife, having a kid, yeah, there's pressure. There was pressure more than once, right? In a way, having that safe network, people that will give you, hey, you can do it. You're capable. We trust you, right? We trust you can get it done. Rightfully so. You have to believe in yourself. But you gotta have that network support with you. I can share with you briefly. I mean, my goal was to have the company provide services. We started taking little steps, and we just loaded out equipment to the Gulf of Mexico after 7 years.
Wow.
Right?
Any other questions? What has been your pathway to become the chair of the SPE Gulf Coast section?
Well, I don't know how I got there. So when I was in New Orleans, I volunteered for the Delta section. I started as a YP, young professional, did the socials programs and the YP, and moved on to be part of the board as well. So I was there for 7 years. I was volunteering with the Delta section for 6 of those years. Right around 2015, when I was getting transferred to Houston, I was actually granted the honor to be the chair of the Delta section. I was given the chair position, and then the following month, I have to say, no, thank you, I'm moving to Houston. So I got to Houston, and I have to say, maybe a year after everything was going on, personal, family, business, once I got things under control, I reached out to the Gulf Coast section. And I think it took about a year and a half or two until, I was able to join the board. I joined the board as a secretary. Then I was a programs chair, vice chair, and then became chair. Yeah. So granted, there's not really a clear path to become a chair in an organization like SPE. You have to work with people. People have to trust you to give you that responsibility, right? And in a section like the Gulf Coast, people are very caring about it to make sure that it does good. So it's been an honor. I have to say it has been an honor. And hopefully by the time that my chair position is over, they'll shake my hand and they'll say, oh. So,
thank you for the work you did.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Maybe just one question to close. This is something that we sort of touched on at the very end of our pre-interview, and is what can we do to enact a positive change within our own circles, right?
Thank you. That's a good question. When you know some of the information, help the next guy, right? Pass it on. I help somebody else. Right? So whether it's information, knowledge, referrals, the more you build a stronger community on what you're doing, what you're working, it becomes a very environment.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I love that. And I think it just ties up, just to close it up, to this concept of supporting each other, right? And it's the concept of supporting your own community, supporting people. So we want to thank you all for being here because you're showing support for us, for SPE, for LatinX Scan. So we really, really appreciate that. And I guess the parting thought really that we want to leave in your minds is how can you then propagate that with every people around you, support your community? It really is this idea of supporting each other and stepping away from a scarcity mindset that, especially as immigrants, we have been brought up to believe that there's only one opportunity. There's only one seat at the table. There's only one person of color that can be a CEO. No, it's not true. If there's only one seat at the table, bring another chair and open up your elbows so that you can make more space for your Black friends, for your Asian friends, for your Latino friends, right? The idea here really is to support each other. And I truly believe that is how we will be able to advance diversity and inclusion, because it's not just about us. It's not just about Latinos, but it's really about getting the representation of the people around us. So with that, we always have the same closing question in the podcast, which is, imagine a person came to visit you in Houston, but you were not around because you're away in business, and they wanted you to show them Houston from a local's point of view. What are your top 3 things to do or places to visit that you would recommend for them to do here in Houston?
Keep in mind, you're asking this to somebody who has a 1.5 and a 7-year-old. That's where I'm at right now. Okay. I mean, Houston is a melting pot. I mean, Chinatown is beautiful. The Heights is beautiful. The aquarium, the zoo as well.
The Houston Zoo.
So that's my life right now. They know me very well at the zoo.
So with that, Carlos, thank you so much for joining us in the podcast today.
Thank you for listening. If you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at LatinX Scan. If you have questions or feedback, you can email us at latinxscan@gmail.com. And if you want to support our project, please leave a review. We have made it easy for you and added the links to the show notes. That's it for now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and remember, unidos somos más.